Welcome to day 290. We're in Luke and John, and we're getting some pretty cool things into the middle of this right before Jesus is going to be condemned. And we need to point out some important parts about the end times things. So remember, these are the things that we want to be looking for. Yeah, there's great stories that are in here that we need to talk about. So let's kind of get into that, but always keep in the back of your mind, what is this all about? What's the purpose of all of this? And Jesus gives us a glimpse into that. All right, so this is all about the rapture at the beginning of this. In chapter 12, Luke 12, verse 37, the servants who are ready and waiting for his return will be rewarded. I tell you the truth, he himself will seat them, put on an apron, and serve them as they sit and eat. So what's he talking about? He's talking about making sure you're ready. If you don't put a shade over your lamp, make it all bright for everyone to see, and always be ready for the master to return. Now this is leading up to what he's talking about, the rapture. He's going to return suddenly. That is not the second coming. All right, so let's talk about why it's not the second coming. In let's just talk about the suddenness. We'll just keep reading those verses. He may come in the middle of the night or just before dawn, but whenever he comes, he will reward the servants who are ready. Understand this, if a homeowner knew exactly when a burglar was coming, he would not permit his house to be broken into. Verse 40, you also must be ready all the time, for the Son of Man will come when least expected. Okay? So, the second coming of Christ is going to be seen by everybody. The rapture is in a moment. Okay? So, we have an understanding of Christ coming a second time. We have no idea when the rapture is going to be. It will be least expected. So that is a rapture verse. And we could argue that a couple different ways, but you can't argue it once you start looking at the differences in the rapture and the second coming. And as we progress, we'll see all these things. All right, now, why did Jesus come? In verse 51 through 52, he says, do you think I've come to bring peace to the earth? No, I have come to divide people against each other. From now on, families will be split apart, 3 in favor of me and 2 against, or 2 in favor and 3 against. The whole point is, once Jesus came, he came to divide, meaning he came to say, here's the line, you're on one side or the other. And since you can't hear or see, you're over there. And all these people know me, they hear me, they understand me, their hearts are for me, they are mine. He came to divide right from wrong, good versus bad, okay? Really, his people and the people who choose not to follow him, not necessarily good people and bad people, because good people also will perish. And I'll say that just in a second. So in verse 56, he calls them morons. You fools, which we've already talked about in the past, that really means you morons. You know how to interpret the weather signs of the earth and sky, but you don't know how to interpret the present times. He's talking about you have eyes to see and ears to hear, but you aren't seeing and you can't hear. You're not listening to what we're saying. And it just goes on and proves his point here. So good people will perish too. Chapter 13, verse 4. And what about the 18 people who died when the tower in Siloam fell on them? Were they the worst sinners in Jerusalem? No, I tell you again that unless you repent, you will perish too. We bring up the Twin Towers. There were good people that were in the Twin Towers. And there are good people that died. My sister died of cancer. She was a good person. Good people perish along with bad people. Okay? And that's a whole nother lesson to talk about why God allows bad things to happen. And we've addressed that early on in the Bible as well. What about the Sabbath, working on the Sabbath? He talks about working and doing things on the Sabbath. And remember, David went into the temple and got the bread that was supposed to be set aside for the priest, and he took it and gave it to his men. And he did this on the Sabbath. And he did, people worked on the Sabbath doing good things. And this is what Jesus is saying to them. He's answering the Pharisees who are idiots, saying, you're working on the Sabbath, you're healing on the Sabbath, you're doing all these things on the Sabbath. Chapter 13, verse 15 and 16. But the Lord replied, you hypocrites, each of you works on the Sabbath day. Don't you untie your ox or your donkey from its stall on the Sabbath and lead it out for water? This dear woman, a daughter of Abraham, has been held in bondage by Satan for 18 years. Isn't it right that she be released even on the Sabbath? We shouldn't be working on the Sabbath. The whole point of the Sabbath is to give us rest. So whatever day of the week you should be taking rest. That doesn't mean don't mow your yard. Okay? It doesn't mean don't fix things that need to be fixed because you don't have time any other time. That's not what it means. It means don't go to work on the Sabbath because you need the day of rest. You need the day to rejuvenate and do things that need to be done. Okay? You need to feed your dog. You need to feed your cattle. You need to do the things that need to be done on the Sabbath. And if you can heal people, heal people. If you're a doctor, go heal people. Okay? Do what you are supposed to be doing to help people. Love God. All right. Now, here's the testifying that Christ is God. John 9, verses 30 through 32. Why, that's very strange, the man replied. He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from. So these are the Pharisees asking the blind guy, where did you say he came from? And he says, that's strange. He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. So the blind man who didn't know that Jesus is the Messiah or Christ, because he's blind, he hadn't heard or whatever, but even he figured it out. He's like, wait a minute, nobody's been able to do this before. What do you mean he's not from God? Are you serious, you bunch of idiots? The blind man is making the case for Christ, and I love this story. Okay, eyes to see, and they can't. In verses 35 through 41, I'm just going to kind of continue this. And so when Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man and asked, do you believe in the Son of Man? The man answered, who is he, sir? I want to believe in him. Stop right there. He already believed. The guy's healed him from his blindness. But he's like, okay, well, who is he? Because he hadn't seen Jesus. He's like, well, who is he? I want to believe in him. You have seen him, Jesus said, and he is speaking to you. Yes, Lord, I believe, the man said. That's the total difference between us and them. I believe. I have seen it with my eyes. I believe. We haven't seen Christ, and we believe. We choose to believe. That is more than most people have done. We choose it. And it goes on. Yes, Lord, I believe, the man said, and he worshiped Jesus. Then Jesus told him, I entered this world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind, and to show those who think they see that they are blind. He's talking about the Pharisees. Some Pharisees were standing nearby, heard him, and asked, are you saying we're blind? Jesus says, if you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty. And Jesus replied, but you remain guilty because you claim you can see. These verses about having eyes to see and ears to hear, it's what Revelation is all about. And go through that real fast. Revelation, the chapter. Go to chapter 2. Just to say it, because it needs to be said. Okay, actually, I'm in chapter 2, verse 17. Revelation. Anyone with ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he's saying to the churches. You say, well, that's in Revelation. Remember, the first 3 chapters are letters to the churches that Jesus gives John. And then chapter 4, the church has been raptured and is heaven. That's the future time that we're going to be talking about. So in this point, it's saying anyone with ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he's saying to the churches. So we are to always be mindful and watching and listening to sermons and reading our Bible and listening, because we are set apart because we chose Christ. Okay? These Pharisees and people out there that are rebelling refuse. And Jesus drew the line. He's divided everybody, and we're on the right side. And we are to try to reach them and to bring them over. That's your day 290. I'll see you tomorrow.